In this particular live broadcast of the Paralegal Discovery channel, I'm going to be discussing ways that you can improve eDiscovery, the process overall. So here you can see that we're going to be going over some specific aspects of eDiscovery that specifically deal with the variables that increase cycle time and also cost. Now, eDiscovery is often considered to be the most expensive aspect of litigation. And within the eDiscovery process, the review phase is the most expensive phase of all the other phases. There's various phases. You have the process phase, you have the collection phase, review phase. These are different phases within eDiscovery. Now, the various cost variables that make up the total cost of eDiscovery include the software that's used, collection, and collection incorporates the personnel that's used to collect the data from the different devices that the data may be retrieved and extracted from: smartphones, regular cell phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, email software. Now you have cloud-based system. So all of these are repositories where information is needed during litigation, during the discovery phase, when evidence is being produced. And so the collection phase contributes to cost in eDiscovery, also processing the data, because once the data is located and collected, it has to be processed so that it can be put in some type of native format that can be then produced or given over to opposing parties or other individuals or participants in a lawsuit or in a particular legal matter. So the processing phase contributes to the cost of eDiscovery, along with reviewing. Now, the ultimate goal in eDiscovery is to retrieve information that may be useful within eDiscovery. So with that, you want to be sure to collect all the necessary data and also avoid giving over information that may be confidential. So being aware of the different variables that increase costs can allow you to decrease the cost, decrease the cycle time, or the amount of time that is taking to collect, process, review the different information. Now, although eDiscovery does not have to be handled by a legal professional, sometimes you have individuals that are specialists with technology. Then you also have individuals that are just versed in the legal field. So when that happens, you have the likelihood that cost will increase because you need more personnel to cover all the different phases within the eDiscovery process. So you can see here on this particular chart that I am going to share that there, out of all of the eDiscovery costs, you have 8% of that cost coming from collection, 19% of that cost coming from processing, and then here 73%. So again, the majority of the cost related to eDiscovery is specifically attributed to the review phase. That's a lot. That's over half. That's more is spent on the review phase alone than the collection and processing phase combined. So that's a lot. So it's really important to be able to key in on that particular phase of the eDiscovery process so that you can help to eliminate costs and eliminate all of the one of the expenses that go into the eDiscovery process. Now, according to Crow on Track, who's a leader in eDiscovery systems and services, the data review phase, as I mentioned before, makes up 73% or 73 cents of every dollar spent on the eDiscovery process. So when attorneys are used during this particular phase, the cost is going to quickly add up, because just like in any other type of legal process, attorneys are billed at a higher rate than a paralegal would be billed at. So if the paralegal is used for eDiscovery, it's going to greatly reduce costs. But before paralegals can begin to be used in the eDiscovery process, they have to be educated on technology and eDiscovery processes. Along with that, paralegals also want to be informed and knowledgeable about quality improvement measurements and tools, procedures, methodologies that can be implemented so that not only our costs decrease, but quality is improved. Because in the eDiscovery, there's always the confusion about what process is used. What process do you use to get the information? Then you have the fights that go on between parties and litigants because of the cost and also the time. One party may ask for something that takes a great deal of time or a great deal of money. And so when you incorporate a quality improvement process and also a project management process, because actually at its root, eDiscovery really is just a different phases. It's a project. It's a project management. So if you're able to view eDiscovery from that mindset, that it's actually a project that you're handling and possibly managing, then it allows you to incorporate some various methods, including statistics, which is a part of Six Sigma, in order to increase quality, reduce cycle times, and reduce cost. Now, to gain an understanding of the document content while organizing them into logical subsets, you have to understand what goes into the actual data review process. You know, maybe something that's new to you. eDiscovery may be something that's new to you. So when you're reviewing data, you want to start off by developing a strategy or a plan, set up a review room. You know, there has to be somewhere where this information is being reviewed. The purpose of this is twofold. First of all, you're looking for information that will help you in your lawsuit or your client you're assisting with, or the other party has requested it. When you're reviewing it, you're looking for information that may need to be produced, but you're also wanting to eliminate producing information that is confidential or privileged. So the review phase is critical because when you're collecting information, you're just collecting from a data set. You're collecting from let's call it a data universe. There's all this data. There's all this data sitting in emails, smartphones, tablets, cloud-based system, iCloud, Google Drive, all these different places. And so what you have to do is to review this information, to first of all, determine if it needs to be produced, and if it does, from there going on to the next phase is to put it in an appropriate format. So there's those different steps that are involved in the review phase that allows you to get to the ultimate goal, which is to either produce or not produce certain information. Now, a data review checklist will help you to stay on point as far as those different aspects of the review phase. Now, as a part of your checklist, you want to incorporate how do you identify potentially privileged information? Because keep in mind, your job is, even if you're using a software program to assist you with eDiscovery, the software program is only as good as the person that's using it. You have to tell the program, put variables in. What are you looking for? It's pulling information. It's extracting information or processing or whatever. But in the review phase, you're actually looking at the information that was collected. How do you identify potentially privileged information? How do you, if you're using a software program, how do you program it, or what parameters do you put into it to identify potentially privileged information that you will then have to go on to review to determine whether it is or not? That's extremely important, because once you hand over that information, you may be able to claw it back, but you may be in a big fight because the other side may say, well, hey, no, you handed this information over to, and then you have all these other issues that come into play. So that's key, is to identify potentially privileged information, and potentially is important because you don't know the computer. You need to program the software program to pull this information from a data set, and from there you have to determine whether it's privileged or not. So this is just a data review checklist. I'm just going to quickly just read off some of the other items that are on there, but that's really, really, really important, because if you hand over some confidential or privileged information, then that's going to be a battle within a battle. An in-source or out-of-source review team, a review platform, attorney managing the review process. You'll be, if you're a paralegal, you will be reporting to an attorney, because the attorney is the one that's ultimately over the entire case. You may be the person that's appointed to handle eDiscovery, but ultimately the attorney, since he or she's the one that is leading the case, will have to somewhere be a part of that eDiscovery team. The number of reviewers and the names of locations need to be determined. The creation of a review and coding template. And then we just discussed, how do you identify, what way do you go about identifying potentially privileged information? Redaction handling. How do you redact information that is some part of that is of some document that you've retrieved, some electronic data, electronic document, whatever, is going to be produced, but part of that needs to be redacted. How is that going to be handled? This needs to be determined in advance. Review batch creation and assignment detail. Review milestone dates. What are those certain dates that are in place to have the entire review process completed? Certain aspects of that completed, that needs to be created in order to keep the project on task. Because keep in mind, there's really no standard or set way to deal with eDiscovery. You can get all over the place with it, really. I mean, because you're dealing with data, you're handling information. So when you're handling information, you don't know from the initially what you need to review, what you don't, And even in the review phase, you don't know what's you may not know what's privileged and what's confidential, but you have to review it. That can go on and on and on. You may sit there and read through hundreds of emails. If you're dealing with let's say like an employee litigation case, you could be spending a massive amount of time just reviewing reading all different emails from different employees. So you have to set those milestones, those dates that you stick to, in order to stay on task and stay in accordance with cost budgets, because the more time you spend on something, the more the cost is going to increase. And so, some have suggested the use of predictive coding within eDiscovery in order to digitize what was once done by the human eye. This allows for the eDiscovery process to be completed quicker, but it also leaves some room for other parties to question whether all the information was produced. Because anytime you replace a human with a computer, a lot of questions get asked as far as, is the computer able to do A, B, and C? So predictive coding, statistical sampling is something that is becoming more and more popular with the use of eDiscovery because of the volume of information and the data that's involved in eDiscovery. Prior to eDiscovery, attorneys and their personnel were reviewing paper documents, information, or physical evidence. Now, not only is there a need to review this physical evidence in documents, there's also a necessity to review, collect, and understand not just data collection and data, the information itself, but the formatting of it. When you're extracting information, let's say from a cell phone, and that's going to be provided to a party, it has to be provided in a format that is usable. So all of these other issues come into play when you're using electronic, now we're dealing with the information age, and most of that information is technological information. So in order to improve the eDiscovery process, there's a lot of different ways and tools to incorporate within it in order to allow that process to be done more efficiently. One, Six Sigma is a great methodology to incorporate within the eDiscovery process, because built into Six Sigma are the very things that are needed in order to not only reduce the cost of the review phase and make that and increase the likelihood that only the information that is being produced is the information that is relevant, but also non-privileged and non-confidential. There's matrix, there's measurement tools that are a part of Six Sigma that can easily be incorporated into the eDiscovery process. And that's essential. That's essential to the effective management of the eDiscovery project, is to improve the efficiency, to reduce the cycle time. Because when you improve the efficiency, or I should say when that's lacking, when efficiency is lacking, then the cycle time is going to increase. Once the cycle time is increased, or the time to complete the eDiscovery process, there's a lot of other issues that come into play. Cost, but not only cost, it could prolong litigation. There's a lot of different aspects to eDiscovery that, when coupled with Six Sigma, can allow it to be handled more efficiently, can cut the cost, reduce the cycle time, and allow it to be conducted in a consistent manner. It does not have to be a process that's determined by the type of case you're working on. It does not have to be a process that is handled based off of who the service provider is, who's the eDiscovery, service provider, what platform you're using. It does not have to be performed in that manner, because when that happens, then from case to case, there's the increase in just the amount of time, the cost, and it will change from case to case. An attorney, a firm, an eDiscovery service, they'll never be able to really stay on budget with the eDiscovery project if it is not handled the same way, if there's not a system in place to handle it the same way every time. The cost, the billing to a client when eDiscovery is part of that particular case, it's probably going to always be off the mark, because there's no way to be able to in advance provide a realistic goal of not just the cost, but also the time, because the method that's being used changes from case to case. So with that said, that's the benefit of using Six Sigma and which is a consistent method. It's been proven that it reduces cycle time and improves processes. It eliminates defects. So why would it not be used within eDiscovery in order to make it more efficient and a more consistent process across the board? So with that, I am going to wrap this particular session up. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you join the next live session on the Paralegal Discovery channel.